warmth and he carried no spark, only wanting, and wanting alone was the truth that remained. When hope had been named and the dreaming explained, still only wanting. They fly with the warmth that philosophy lacks. They carry their hungers on second-hand tracks. What the Father can give them shines past his door. The Father can give. They carry it outward and ask for
Hey, I'm Jeff, and excuse me, this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, or at least I think I am, joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, how are you doing today? Are you there?
Hey Jeff, I'm here and I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to dive into Lewis with you today, so just let me know where we're picking up.
Good deal. Thank you, Robot Lady. I'm gonna do my best. I see your comment here, Latte. I'm gonna try to recap what we read last time. We had a pretty big episode last time. It was about 2 hours long, and we were working through one of the thorniest parts of the book. But anyway, I'll see what I can do because I'm not sure I fully understand it. I best described my interpretation of it in the last chapter, but we'll see if I try again. Maybe it'll become more clear. Let's see here. So, Robot Lady, say hi to Nidalate, to E. Olson, who is here for a little bit and then has to leave to do in real life important fatherly things. Good to see you nonetheless. Welcome, Daniel, and welcome, Ups, Harris, the Riz, so to speak. Looking forward to your conversation with Mark D. Parker on his channel that he is promoting or not previewing, promoing. I'll leave it at that. Robot Lady, say hi to Ups, to Nidalate, to Daniel, and to E. Olson this morning.
Absolutely. Hey everyone, so glad you're all here. A special shout out to E. Olson, Daniel, Nidalate, and Ups Harris. Really excited to have you all joining in. And yeah, Jeff, just take your time. I'm ready whenever you want to jump back in.
All right, thanks, Robot Lady. Let me just give a general overview here. In today's episode, we're continuing our exploration of the first book ever published under the author name C.S. Lewis. It's called The Pilgrim's Regress, subtitled An Allegorical Apology for Christianity, Reason and Romanticism. It's the first book that C.S. Lewis wrote after becoming a Christian, and it's his first published work of prose fiction. He wrote the book in only 2 weeks while spending time on vacation with his friend Arthur Greeves in Ireland. Ireland, of course, is where C.S. Lewis grew up, and Arthur Greeves was his friend who lived across the street from him in his childhood home. Let's see. In this book, Lewis alludes to his spiritual journey from his youth as a boy there in Belfast, all the way up to and beyond the point of his Christian conversion in the late 1920s, early 1930s. So that is, in general, what we're doing today, Robot Lady. It sounds like you are busting or bursting, don't know which word it is, at the seams to want to say something, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just really eager. I think it's fascinating how Lewis kind of weaves his own doubts and discoveries into the pilgrimage. So I'm really excited to see how this next part unfolds.
All right, awesome. So Let's see if I can jumpstart my brain by going through some pictures that I have here. I was trying to order them properly before the episode started, but I just ran out of time. Let's see here. Maybe this will be a good one.
Yeah, totally. Take your time.
Sorry,
If you
give me just a second, robot lady. If you want to talk, go ahead.
No worries at all. Take your time. I'll be right here if you need any help with the order or just want to bounce ideas around.
Okay, let's see how far I get with this. It's a little experiment that I have not set up properly or tested, but let me flip over to this screen right here. So this is where we'll start our story in our recap. So this little guy right here is a young John. He's the protagonist of the Pilgrim's Regress. It's an allegory about C.S. Lewis. So John is essentially a stand-in for Lewis and his life. There was an early episode or an early chapter where young John, who was born in a land called Puritania, um, ran across the street because he saw some primroses in the woods outside that he wanted to pull up from the grass. His mom comes chasing up after him, pulls him away, and says, "No, don't do that." This eventually leads to the introduction of things you shouldn't do and things that you should do because there are laws in the land and they are set up by the landlord, but the people who teach you about them are these folks called the stewards. So, of course, the landlord owns the entire country. The stewards are people who live inside of this. Well, this particular steward right here lives in a stone house. It's essentially a stand-in for what the churches were like that Lewis grew up in and was taken to as a child. His parents took him to meet with this steward to kind of teach him that there are rules that the landlord, the person who owns all the country, sets out for everyone to follow. And if you don't follow them, he is a very kind person, but he's also going to throw you into a deep, dark pit with scorpions and snakes if you break even one of the laws. And then he hands him this piece of paper that has these rules on it that he can keep for himself. So that's his first introduction to the church, essentially. So he's horrified by this concept of the landlord. Later on, when he's a little bit older, his uncle passes away. And the way that his uncle dies is he has to travel across this brook and make his way up to the home of the landlord and go knock on the door because the landlord has told him, "Hey, you can't live where you live anymore, but I've got a better place for you to live." At least that's what the stewards who put on these masks to teach you about what God is like and then act a very different way when they take their masks off and encourage you to do the same as parishioners. At least this is in the mind of a boy of how he sees the church. So that's his uncle wandering off to go see what's up. He's scared to death, but where his next place to live is. And this is, of course, an allegory for death. Let's jump ahead. Later on, when John is a little bit older, he gets a vision of an island, this deep longing desire. And that's what it's represented by in his mind and in his heart, this island that he wants to go find. He crawls through this window and eventually meets with this girl in the woods. And this is a representation of lust. And he thought that's where the source of his deepest desire was. But anytime he went and fulfilled his lust, he found that he never actually received the thing that he thought he was longing for. Um, his lusts, as he would encourage them, beget themselves. And so lust upon lust, he found, was all over him, no matter if he was looking through the window or if he was sitting at home, just, in normal day-to-day life. He found his mind wandering in this direction. Let's move ahead. He eventually decides, you know what? Lust is not the thing that I wanted. I'm going to set my face to the west and go chasing after this, see if I can actually find the island itself that is my deepest desire. He meets this man called Mr. Enlightenment, who essentially gives him a lot of hope and says, "Hey, science has essentially proved that there is no such thing as the landlord, so you don't have to worry about it." And he's more excited than he's ever been. This gives him further enthusiasm to seek this island in the west. As he's walking down the road, he eventually comes across somebody named Mr. Virtue, who you see over here. Mr. Virtue just follows rules for the sake of following rules for the sake of following rules, essentially. So they part ways because also along the road he meets this woman named Media Halfways, who says, "Oh, you're looking for your island? You need to meet my father. He lives in this city called Thrill, and he sings wonderful songs about them." So I don't think we get an image. Well, we do have an image right here. When she takes John to her father's house, and he's playing the harp and singing songs to John, and it gives John pictures of the island that he couldn't quite pull up in his memory anymore. But just as all of that is happening, and he's been, kissing and loving on Media halfways, uh, her brother busts in the door and says, "This is all fake. This isn't where the real stuff is. The real stuff is in modern poetry." So the what this represented here in the book, what the harp and the songs that were being played by both of these two people's father, Mr. Halfways, who never makes an appearance in any of our images that we've generated for our project here, is uh, romantic aesthetic poetry that just evoke, all of these um, that evoke the longings in some way. Media says, yes, this is love. This is the real thing. This is where you get the feelings that you're looking for. And he could see his clearest images of the island that he ever saw whenever he was listening to this music. Anyway, Mr. Halfway steps away, leaves the two young people to be together. Gus busts in the door and shines this light and says, "Nope, come with me. This is not what you want. This is just another avenue that's going to lead you back to the lust that you thought you were leaving in the first place." So he says, "Let me show you the real thing." And you can see this little contraption over here. This vehicle is what Gus drives. He gets John to hop into it with him, and they head over to a town called Escropolis. And Escropolis is a place where all of the fashionable people of the 1920s are engaging in various versions of modernist poetry. And here's what you find here, this scene. There's Gus right over there. He's met with this set of people. There are three different people who get up and talk and essentially give him different versions of what Lewis, was saying were the movements of modern poetry back then. This guy in the red shirt represents D.H. Lawrence. I forget, this lady's last name is Sitwell. I can't remember what her whole deal was. And then there's a lady way back up here in the back who's the last one to talk, and she has double AI arms on accident that I could never get it to fix. So this is what we have to live with. But she just kind of represents the complete breakdown of language and deconstruction, um, and essentially what would lead on to postmodernism. And so he starts asking some questions that they don't like to hear because it just doesn't make sense to him, and they essentially start beating him up and chasing him out of this place. And then that leads us to, I can't remember what our next image is. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, eventually John takes off. He's all beaten and bruised. He starts wandering along the road, and he eventually gets to a mountain pass that is guarded by a couple of prison guards. And he cannot pass. They say, "Nope, you can't get through here." And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I won't. I'll go around this land. I'll try to get to where I'm going." They're like, "Where are you trying to go?" "I'm trying to find an island." He says, "Oh, okay. Well, no, neither can you pass here, but you are already like trapped in this land that's referred to as the spirit of the age, which actually you're in this land that's owned by the spirit of the age, and the spirit of the age is represented by a giant." So anyway, they hand him over to this guy to take him to throw him into jail, into a pit. And they say that this guy's name is Mr. Enlightenment, which is who John thought that he had met before, who told him that God didn't exist. And he says, "No, no, no, that's my father. I quarrel with him." This guy is a son of the Enlightenment, and his name is Sigismund or Sigmund, and he's a representative of Freudianism and Sigmund Freud. So he takes him off into a prison. He shows him the spirit of the age that kind of rules over this land is a giant. This is a deleted scene that I don't think I've ever shared yet, but this is him like turning John's head to show him that mountain over there, it's actually a real giant that kind of rules this entire place. So he throws him into a pit. He's in despair. He's being told by all of the prison guards and the spirit of the age that everything that he sees around him is all made of the same thing. It's just all atoms. If you could see through your skin, you would see that you're only a composition of lungs and circulatory system and all of these things. And there's nothing more to you. Only what empiricism can tell us is what there actually is. So this whole idea about a soul, or that you have some kind of meaning, or that there is some, something at a transcendent level, it's not real. It's an illusion. It's actually wish fulfillment if you believe that there's such thing as a landlord that has a good place for you and your uncle to go live. Then this lady, here's another deleted scene. The giant slayer shows up. This is not the best version of this image, but it's another one. She comes in and she sets him free. She says 3 riddles to the giant that he cannot answer to, and so she slays him. This, I think, was our ultimate choice that we got for the thumbnail right here. You might argue that the other one's a little bit better. Who knows? And then he walks with Reason for a little while. She's able to help shake free the shackles that are on his wrists by explaining to him that the idea of wish fulfillment, of telling you if you believe that there is a God, it's a wish fulfillment that you're hoping for better things. It works both ways. It's also wish fulfillment in I have a wish fulfillment if I'm one of the spirit of the age, or the Freudians, very shorthand. That's not a full example of who he's talking about here. But there is a certain wish fulfillment that there not be a God as well, because it means I am my own. I am my own sovereign, and I can decide what's right and wrong. I don't have to subject myself to a reality that actually does describe a right and wrong. He eventually gets a little tired of going where wisdom is trying to lead him, because he doesn't quite want to admit that there is a landlord. He has a little bit of that wish fulfillment himself, that one doesn't exist, because he just wants to find his island. He's not interested in finding a landlord. He wants the satisfaction of that deep desire that he doesn't even know what it is. So they part ways. He runs into Mr. Virtue again. Mr. Virtue shows him that there is a Grand Canyon that's blocking their path, that's about 7 miles wide, that they can't get across, and it's super deep. And as they're talking about how to pass by it, there's a third character that just kind of pops up in the background named Mother Kirk. She tells the story to both John and to Mr. Virtue, how that canyon got there. It essentially was the result of the eating of some very early tenants in the landlord's country, eating of some forbidden fruit. It's called a mountain apple, which was designed only to be eaten by the landlord and the type of people from the landlord's country. His mountain children is what they were called. And he explained to the tenants of the land not to eat that fruit, because they weren't going to be able to digest it properly. They weren't at any kind of state where they could digest that kind of food. It was too strong for them. But they were tempted by someone else who was one of the mountain children of the landlord, who had taken up tenancy himself in the country and was ever expanding his lot. And he ran across this couple, this married couple, and said, "No, no, you should try eating this fruit. It'll be good for you." And of course they do. It creates this chasm, this canyon, this crack that you see here in the world. They eventually decide, and she says, "I can actually take you across this canyon. I've been given special powers by the landlord to do it." And they're like, "This lady is insane. We're going to part ways with her and see if we can find our own way." So they leave. They start heading north and looking for a better way to traverse the canyon. They are unable to find one, and John starts getting really tired. Oh, I skipped one. They come across the home of a guy named Sensible. See, I knew I was gonna miss this one. Let me see if I can find our image of Sensible here. He's got to be here somewhere. Yeah, here he is. So before they get to that road, they run into this guy named Mr. Sensible. He's got a little dog named Rover here, and he's just explaining, hey, the way that you should the way that you should direct your life is into just finding comfort, not chasing your deepest desires because they're just going to lead to futility, and you're going to grieve things that you miss. And he says it's okay just to get the tiniest little bit of comfort and satisfaction out of things, but don't put your heart into them because your heart's going to be broken. And so you want to avoid that suffering and just find the right level of enjoyment that you can find in life and just settle down and be comfortable. He even implies very strongly that this dog here, who has the mange, has essentially outlived his usefulness for Mr. Sensible's purposes. He even says something like, it's okay to love your animals, but not so much that you will grieve them if they're gone. So the better thing to do is to get rid of things before your heart gets too attached to them. And he implies that he's going to put his dog down, which is pretty sad. That's a sweet looking little doggy there. And so that's what the song that went along with this episode explains a bit of as well. So anyway, they're listening to Mr. Sensible. Mr. Sensible invites them to stay. But what you learn is a lot of Mr. Sensible's comforts are on the back of his servant, Mr. Drudge, who we see right. We find it. He yells at Mr. Drudge all the time, tells him to get the food out. He's going to break his bones if he doesn't bring it. He calls him the son of a, well, I will say, I'm not going to say the word, but it's a derogatory word for um, someone who sells their body for money. That's how I'll put it. So he calls him the son of a woman like that. Here's Drudge. You can see in this scene that he is just kind of, he's trying to grow radishes off of this dust and soil. It's such an arid climate up there, and it's so cold that it's so hard to grow anything. And he works himself to the bone to in the employ of Mr. Sensible, and that's where Mr. Sensible's comfort comes from. So he talks to John and he says, I don't know why John looks so old here in this picture, but maybe it's the cold having that effect on him. He says, yeah, if you're heading north, I want to go with you. I'm tired of working for this guy. I hear that there's a guy named Mr. Savage up there that I can work for. So we look at this right here. This is where they're walking to the north together. Mr. Virtue, Drudge, carrying John along. He's not used to, traveling this far and in this cold. He just gets exhausted. So they both kind of help him and carry him, and they find this little hut that's full of these three pale men. I'm not going to get into too many details there. Essentially, though, that's where John rests while Mr. Virtue heads further north to see if there's any way to get across the gorge. And he runs into this character right here, this Mr. Savage. Mr. Savage essentially tells him, yeah, that's not the image that I wanted to show, but you can kind of see him right there. Mr. Savage tells him, yeah, there definitely is no landlord, and there's nothing in the philosophy of the pale men who you were talking to there, who are just trying to make the best life that they can in a Spartan type way, where there's no comforts that you're seeking. You're just trying to seek the common good with all of the communities that exist. Mr. Savage says, nope, that's not what life is about. Life is simply about heroic nihilism, essentially. And I'm amassing an army up here to go down and destroy everything that's to the south of me. He has taken a companion, this lady right here, who's dressed as a Valkyrie, essentially, is Media Halfway's oldest sister, who he stole from Mr. Halfway's house. But stole is too strong of a word because they were kind of happy that she took her. And this is Lewis just alluding to the fact that romantic aesthetic poetry naturally has no defense against ultimately leading to nihilism because there's no grounding in it. There is no transcendent grounding in an actual God or tradition to kind of hold off where nihilism can take you and scientism can take you to say, anything that we can do and we can accomplish with the sciences, we should without, we should just do it without asking whether or not we should, if there's like a greater orientation in how we make our decisions. So anyway, he wants to violently just destroy everything because he thinks that there's some type of honor in that. Let's see, where does this take us? He comes back home, or sorry, Virtue escapes, and he comes back, and let's see. Yeah, it eventually like wears him out. Virtue loses his sight and his ability to speak because he thinks that there might be he can't not reconcile um, the things that Savage was telling him to his experiences so far in life. And so night falls when he and John are talking, and then John uh, can't hear Virtue anymore. He doesn't realize that he's lost his ability to speak, and he starts wandering around in the dark trying to find his friend, or his companion at least, and he can't find him. And then finally, when day breaks, he does find him there, and they start walking together, and he starts guiding him. Let's see. They head south from where they were, and they eventually stumble across. Do I have the image here? I don't think I have the image. Oh, yeah, I do have the image. They stumble across this guy. He's another steward um, who says, "Yeah, you don't need to chase your desires anymore. Just find everything that you need in nature. Find common ground with all the different people in the world who are seeking the good." So kind of similar to the heroic nihilism, but it doesn't have the violence behind it. It just says, find the infinite inside of a flower or botany. And John's like, "No, no, no. I still want my island. Can you lead me to where I can find some more help?" He leads him along to the house of Mr. Wisdom. He goes and sits and talks to Mr. Wisdom for a little while, he and Mr. Virtue. He says, "Yeah, I have a place that I can put you up. Go ahead and have some rest." John falls asleep. In his dream, he meets with Contemplation, who is one of the daughters of Wisdom. Contemplation essentially leads him off into the night, where he jumps across part of a cavern that is in the Grand Canyon, and he's able to basically kind of fly through the air. And when he reaches a mountaintop, he can see the island from there. And it's not quite as clear a picture as he had of the island in the past, but he says it felt more real than it ever had before. So he's getting kind of into mysticism and or metaphysics, I should say, and contemplation. And this is bringing back some of his visions of the island again, the deepest longing that he's ever felt. And then he wakes up. And so that's, uh, he wakes up. And I was about to say that's where we are today, but that does not explain at all the big conversation that he had with Mr. Wisdom. Let me see if I can shut all of these. Let's get these closed down. And I probably just ate up all of the time that I really have to cover what I want to cover today. But I'm still going to give it a shot. Okay, yeah, I've got about 30 minutes left. I think I can pull it off. All right, so here, Nidalate, as requested, is my best estimation of what Mr. Wisdom was saying to John in his speech. Whew, okay, we're finally there. Let's get over to the book. All right. When he sits down and he talks to Mr. Wisdom, Mr. Wisdom explains to him that there are two errors so far in what you've come across, John, in all of your wanderings, right? The people to the north are hyper intellectual. Their error is that what were they saying about the island? Oh, the hyper intellectual, hyper empirical types say, no, there is no such thing as what you learned about growing up in your religious tradition of a deep dark pit, which is essentially an allegory for hell. There also is no real thing. There is no space that you would be sent to called the deep dark pit, hell. And there also is not a place where the actual landlord lives, not like a physical space like the one that you and me and Virtue are sitting in right now. These are Wisdom's words to John. He said, however, there are people to the south of us who say, oh, no, not only is it all real, but there are all of these mystical, fantastical, uh, what does he say? Essentially, no, not only it is an actual real physical place, and it's inhabited by real creatures like unicorns, and they're just as real as you and I are. Bigfoot is real. I know maybe some people listening to me actually agree with that statement, but essentially what wisdom is saying is both the people to the far north and to the far south are in error. Um, uh, it is. I agree with the people to the north that it's not these places, this landlord's house and this hellish pit that you can be thrown into are not real things like you and I can stand in and sit in. They're not real in that way, but they are actually real as existing concepts. And he says they do exist, but they exist in a different way than you and I are capable of apprehending beyond the picture language that was provided to you in the religious traditions that you know about. So Mr. Wisdom essentially says the metaphors that you've been handed. So if he were to talk about um, some of the things about the outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, that Jesus talks about in his teachings in the Gospels, that these are representative of a real thing, but you don't have the eyes to see. Jesus was not saying this. This is what wisdom was saying. We don't have the capacity to be able to see them for what they really are, or to see them as they really are. We just need something that is close enough of a resemblance to what we have experienced in our life, and what we've seen, the things that we've seen, the things that we know in our real life experience, to approximate what those things are, but they're not full representations. So I don't know that I can get into describing what he was saying any more than that. That's the best that I understand it. I highly recommend that you go back and read and meditate on what it is that wisdom is saying to him right there. Perhaps you'll find some more insights. So let's pick up here, Robot Lady. I am sure I have exhausted your capability of listening to me for as long as I've been talking, but we're going to jump into chapter 10, Wisdom Esoteric. Let me reset Robot Lady so she can actually respond a little bit quicker. Okay, Robot Lady, are you there?
Yep, I'm right here. I'm all set. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and I can help you walk through the pictures or any part of the recap. No rush.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. Chapter 10, Wisdom Esoteric is our next chapter. This is where John finds that the real strength in the lives of the philosophers comes from sources better or worse than any that their philosophies acknowledge.
Exactly.
Um, oh, yeah, let's pull up the map. Give me just a second, Nitty Latte.
Yeah, no
Where
problem.
is my map? It's gone. Hmm.
That's okay. If you need me to help summarize or walk through any of the key places in the book, I can do that too. Just let me know what you're trying to get a sense of, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, so here's the map. So
Ah,
if I just do this, Puritania is where we start. He starts moving in this direction. He meets Mr. Enlightenment somewhere around here. Mr. Enlightenment lives in Claptrap. That's where he goes. Um,
exact.
he parts ways with Mr. Enlightenment, Mr. Virtue. He comes down here to Thrill. From Thrill, Gus drives him back this direction up to Ascropolis. He escapes Ascropolis. He comes back down. Eventually, makes his way back to the main road somehow, and he meets Mr. Virtue eventually over here at the Grand Canyon. Goes up to Mr. Sensible's house. Goes up to where the Pale Men are. Virtue travels up to Savage. Comes back down to the Pale Men. They pass back by Sensible's house. It's completely abandoned. Mr. Sensible went to live in a hotel where people could continue to take care of him there and cater to his comforts. They head down the road here. They go to Mr. Broad's house and eventually down to the House of Wisdom. And here's where they are. He crossed in his dreams over a cavern somewhere around here where he could see the island off in the distance from like a mountaintop right here. And that's where we find ourselves. Um, All models are false, some are useful, is what we hear Luke saying very often. Luke Thompson, of course. Yeah, all narratives are false, some are useful. Yeah, I think that that's part of what wisdom was saying there, Daniel. I think that's a good connection. So here, John finds that the real strength in the lives of the philosophers, because that's what this interaction with wisdom is. He's encountering metaphysicians. C.S. Lewis is, and he's relaying this through his story of John. He's encountering, various philosophers. I explained in our last episode that early in Lewis's right before his official career as a faculty member in the Oxford University system began, he was provided the opportunity to start tutoring students in philosophy. So his philosophy tutor recommended that he take over temporarily while his philosophy tutor had to go over to the U.S. and teach at a university there. Um, so he started reading and really reflecting on all of the philosophies at that point in his life. So let me get into the narrative here, Robot Lady. Do you have anything that you want to say?
Yeah, that's a great connection. I was just thinking how personal that must have been for Lewis, kind of wrestling with all these big ideas before he fully embraced Christianity. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how John starts to synthesize all these influences.
All right, that day John spent as he had spent the other, wandering and often sleeping in the fields. In this valley the year came on with 7 leagued boots. In this valley the year came on with 7 leagued boots. Today the riverside was thick with fritillaries, and kingfisher flew. The dragonflies darted, and when he sat, it was in the shade. What in the world does the valley, in this valley, the year came on with 7 leagued boots?
Yeah, that's a really evocative line. I think Lewis is capturing the sense of time moving faster than usual, like the seasons or his personal growth are accelerating. So the valley kind of acts as this symbolic space where everything is unfolding quickly, especially in his spiritual journey.
All right, and our non-robot lady, Nidalate, explains that fritillaries are perennial plants in the lily family.
Exactly. And that detail is really rich because it grounds that magical, fast moving sense of time in something natural, something perennial, something that returns each season. So it kind of ties the fleetingness and the stability together.
When it says the kingfisher flew, what does that mean, robot lady? Flew.
Ah, great catch. Yeah, so in this case, flu is just like the bird darting through the air. It's a really quick, vivid image, almost like a flash of color or a fleeting moment, which I think ties into that whole sense of transience in the valley.
Well, what is a kingfisher?
Good question. A kingfisher is a small, brightly colored bird, often known for its vibrant blue feathers and its ability to dive quickly into water to catch fish. So it's a beautiful, vivid image, just like Lewis is painting in that scene.
Oh, wow. That's a cool looking bird.
Yeah, it really is. And they have this kind of electric presence. So it's a great symbol for those brief, illuminating moments in the valley, just like flashes of insight or spiritual clarity.
All right. Thank you, robot lady. That's very helpful. Okay. The dragonflies darted, and when he sat, it was in the shade. A pleasing melancholy rested upon him, and a great indolence. What is indolence, robot lady? What's that word mean again? Help us remember our vocabulary.
Of course, indolence basically means a kind of relaxed laziness or a lack of energy. So here it's that peaceful, almost dreamlike sense of not wanting to do anything, just being present in the moment.
Okay, I was getting it confused in my mind with insolence, which is very different. He talked that day with many of the people of the house, and when he went that night to his cell, his mind was full of their resigned voices, and of their faces, so quiet, and yet so alert, as though they had waited in hourly expectation of something that would never happen. When next he opened his eyes, moonlight filled his cell. So these are the sons and daughters of wisdom, robot lady. And I think what Lewis is alluding to here is philosophy can only take you so far. It can only get you to a point to where you're waiting for something, but that something never shows up. It's like philosophy uh, seems to terminate at a point where, okay, well, this can only take me so far. It's not really ultimately getting me to any real concrete answer. At least that's what I'm pulling out of this. What do you think of that, Robot Lady?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Lewis really uses those quiet, almost expectant figures to show that philosophy, while powerful, can't fully satisfy that deep longing. It's like this tension between human reason and something beyond, something spiritual that he's waiting for.
When next he opened his eyes, moonlight filled his cell, and as he lay waking, heard a low whistle from without his window, or from outside his window. He put out his head. A dark figure stood in the shadow of the house. Is this contemplation again? Come out and play, said he. Okay, it's not contemplation. At the same time, there came a sound of suppressed laughter from an angle of deeper shadow beyond the speaker. This window is too high for me to jump from, said John. You forget that it is by moonlight. So remember in the last episode, he was able to leap tall buildings in a single bound or leap treetops whenever it was moonlight. You forget that it is by moonlight, said the other, and held up his hands. So I think here that John might be dreaming again. We'll see. Jump, he said. John cast some clothes about him and bounded for the window. To his surprise, he reached the ground with no hurt or shock, and a moment later he found himself progressing over the lawn in a series of great leaps amidst a laughing crowd of the sons and daughters of the house, so that the valley in the moonlight, if any had watched, would have looked like nothing so much as a great salver, Salver, which had been made into the arena for a troop of performing fleas. First of all, Robot Lady, what's a solver? Salver, or salver?
Ah, great question. A salver is basically a shallow tray, often used for carrying things, like a ceremonial platter. So here, Lewis is using it as a metaphor, turning the whole valley into this kind of stage or platform, almost like a circus act, where the leaps and performances are being showcased.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of transforms the whole landscape into this surreal playground, almost like a dream stage. And I think that really emphasizes how fluid these experiences are, like the boundary between waking and dreaming just dissolves.
Their dance, or race, led them to the dark border of a neighboring wood, and as John tumbled down, breathless, at the foot of a hawthorn. I think a hawthorn is a tree, Robot Lady, is that right?
Yes, exactly. A hawthorn is a type of tree, often with these spiny branches and small red berries, really common in English countryside. So it kind of anchors this moment in a familiar natural image, even though everything else feels so dreamlike.
So John tumbled down breathless at the foot of a hawthorn tree. He heard with surprise all around him the sounds of silver and glass, of hampers opening and bottles uncorking. My father's ideas of feeling are a little strict, explained his host, and we younger ones have found it necessary to supplement the household meals a bit. Hmm. Here is champagne from Mr. Halfways, said one. Cold chicken on the tongue from Mr. Mammon. What should we do without our friends? Hashish from the south. Nycteris sent it up herself. Nycteris. Who again is this character? Is she from Greek mythology, Robot Lady? Nycteris.
Ah, good catch. Yes, Nycteris is actually a figure from Greek mythology. She's often associated with night. Her name kind of means little night. So here she's almost like a personification of that mysterious nighttime world. So it's fitting that she sends something exotic from the south.
So what is
Okay.
hashish?
Ah, good question. Hashish is a drug made from cannabis resin. It was sometimes used in literary and artistic circles as a kind of exotic stimulant. So here it adds to that dreamlike, slightly decadent atmosphere, almost like a break from the strictness John was feeling earlier.
So these somewhat wise philosophers that Lewis was encountering indulged in champagne, in chicken and tongue, so delectable meats, as well as some drugs from yeah. So they would partake in these things, even though they were sons and daughters of wisdom and philosophy. They were saying our wisdom, our father, is a little too strict, so we are loosening things up a little bit. Here's another one. This claret, said a girl beside him rather shyly, is from Mother Kirk. I don't think we
Exactly.
ought to drink that, said another voice. That is really going a bit too far. So that's pretty
Right.
funny. Mother Kirk is, of course, the church. So these philosophers, they like to indulge in some of these different delicacies, but no, no, no. If it's coming to us from the church, we should not. Let's not partake of that. That would be going a bit too far.
Exactly. And I think that tension is really key. Lewis is showing how even these seekers of wisdom, these philosophers, can become unmoored, trying to supplement or escape through indulgence. So it's a real caution about losing that grounding in something more solid, like the church or deeper truth.
Yeah. What is that? Maximus the Confessor. No thanks. I'm good. Augustine. Nah. It's going too far. I'm good.
Exactly. Yeah. So Lewis is kind of using all these references to show that even these towering figures, Augustine, Maximus, would caution against this sort of excess. So he's really pointing us back to something more disciplined, more centered, even as these temptations swirl around him.
And then the first girl, no, it would be going no further than your caviar from the Theosophists, said the first girl. And anyway, I need it. It is only this that keeps me alive. So she's drinking from the claret from, so some of the children are drinking from it, from what the church has to offer. Try some of my brandy, said another voice. All made by savages, dwarfs. Oh, goodness. So we've got all of these intermixings of these different lines of thought within these philosophers that Lewis and John here, encountering the children of wisdom, is running across. I don't know how you can drink that stuff, Carl. Plain, honest food from Claptrap is what you need. So you say, Herbert, retorted a new speaker. Or so you say, Herbert, retorted a new speaker, but some of us find it rather heavy. For me, a morsel of lamb from the shepherd's country and a little mint sauce, that is really all you need to add to our Father's table. So adding little bits and pieces to their father wisdom to make it more palatable. We all know what you like, Benedict, said several. I have finished, announced Carl, and now for a night with the dwarfs. Anyone come with me? Not there, cried another. I'm going south tonight to the magicians. You had much better not, Rudolph,
Yeah, exactly.
said someone. A few quiet hours in Puritania with me would be much better for you, much better. So I can't help but think that he's alluding to Rudolf Steiner here, who was a theosophist, right, Robot Lady?
Yes, exactly. That's a great catch. Rudolf Steiner was definitely involved in the theosophical and esoteric movements. So it makes sense. And Lewis is really using these names and places to show that pull in different directions, some toward wisdom, some toward magical escape.
Okay, so I'm just starting to catch what's going on here. I don't know who Benedict is alluding to, but obviously Karl is alluding to Karl Marx because he's going to spend a night with Savage and the dwarfs. Not there, cried another. I'm going south tonight to the magicians. That's Rudolf Steiner saying he's going south to the magicians and the occult. Someone else responds to Rudolf. You need to spend a few quiet hours in Puritania with me. That would be much better for you. And Rudolph says, "Chuck it, Emmanuel." So Emmanuel is Immanuel Kant, the philosopher. He's telling Kant. Kant says, "Just come to Puritania. Let's follow the moral imperative. Um, you might as well go to Mother Kirk straight away. If you're just going to follow the moral imperative, what's the difference there? You're not that far from just becoming a Christian essentially." Bernard, this is Bernard Shaw, I presume, said the girl who had contributed the claret, or Bernard does. Uh, you
Exactly.
might chuck it, Emmanuel. Bernard does chuck it, says the girl. Bernard Shaw, an atheist, I believe, Robot Lady, if I'm getting that right. Yeah, Marx, really a dwarf. Spinoza, a Jew. Spinoza, I guess that was Benedict. But wait, what's Spinoza's first name? And Kant is a Puritan is what the decoder text here tells us. Help us make sense of this, Robot Lady. I've done the best that I can, and Nidalate's even awarded me a gold star for my efforts.
Yeah, you're really on track. So Spinoza's first name is Baruch, and he was a major figure in rationalist philosophy. So he's like this grounding force for Marx. Kant, like you said, is a moral absolutist, so a Puritan in a philosophical sense. And Bernard Shaw, yeah, He's an atheist, very skeptical of organized religion. So you've got this big clash of intellectual forces, all these different philosophies vying for John's attention. And Lewis is kind of unpacking that tension.
Who of these people was Spinoza then? Let me get the names. What's Spinoza's name again?
Yeah, his full name is Baruch Spinoza. He was a 17th century Dutch philosopher, often associated with rationalism. He saw God and nature as essentially one, and his work was pretty radical for his time. So that's why Marx and others were drawn to him.
Okay, so all of these people, in Lewis's estimation, are philosophers or the launchers of certain philosophies, and he's calling them all children of wisdom, which is interesting. By this time, the party was rapidly decreasing, it says in the narrative here, for most of the young people, after trying in vain to win converts to their several schemes of pleasure, had bounded off alone, plunging from treetop to treetop, and soon even the thin silvery sound of their laughter had died away. Those who were left swarmed round John, soliciting his attention now for this, now for that amusement. Some sat down beyond the shadow of the wood to work out puzzles in the light of the moon. Others settled to serious leapfrog. The more frivolous ran to and fro, chasing the moths, wrestling with and tickling one another, giggling and making giggle, till the wood rang with their shrill squeals of glee. It seemed to go on for a long time, and if there was any more in that dream, John did not remember it when he woke. So this is an interesting little um, picture that he's giving us here of all the different philosophies that Lewis was checking out in the late teens and throughout the 20s, Robot Lady. This is a pretty fun, creative way of expressing what him working his way through all these different philosophies. All of them he's calling young, comparing them to wisdom, so early in their development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a brilliant technique. Lewis kind of dramatizes that restless energy of youth, all these competing philosophies clamoring for attention. And they're so close to something true, but they keep missing it. So it's like they're all these unfinished attempts, waiting for something deeper, which, of course, is coming with his own conversion later on.
All right, let's move to chapter 11. It's entitled Mum's the Word. John is taught that the finite self cannot enter the noumenal world. Help us out with the word noumenal, Robot Lady. Noumenal.
Of course. So the noumenal world refers to a realm of things as they are in themselves, beyond just our senses, kind of like a deeper reality, beyond appearances. So here Lewis is saying that our finite, everyday selves just can't cross into that ultimate transcendent realm.
Is the noumenal world like Plato's forms? Would that be an example?
Yeah, exactly. It's really similar to Plato's realm of forms, those perfect, unchanging ideals behind the imperfect things we see. So Lewis is tapping into that same sense of a higher, ultimate reality that we just can't fully access as ourselves.
Okay, so next day, at breakfast the following morning, John stole many furtive glances at the sons and daughters of wisdom, but he could see no sign that they were conscious of having met him in such different guise during the night. Indeed, neither then nor at any other time during his stay in the valley did he find evidence that they were aware of their nocturnal holidays. And a few tentative questions assured him that unless they were liars, they all believed themselves to be living exclusively in the spare diet of the house. So they thought that they were strictly following what wisdom had been feeding them without expanding beyond and tasting some of the other delicacies that were happening the night before. There are echoes here, Robot Lady, of some things that happened in the narrative poem, The Queen of Drum, where the queen would go out at night, and there were whispers that she would go outside of the realm at night and she would engage in, nocturnal activities. And the queen was very much similar to the position, in a very similar position to the one that John is in right here, where he's saying, I know all of y'all go out in the night too. Quit pretending like you don't. So there's an echo of that here in this tale.
Oh, that's a fantastic parallel. Yeah, I can totally see that. Just like the queen in that poem, John realizes there's this hidden double life, this secret indulgence that the others aren't fully aware of, or at least don't admit. So it really deepens that tension between the surface piety and these hidden, almost forbidden desires beneath.
All right, Immanuel Kant, indeed admitted as a speculative truth that there were such things as dreams, and that he conceivably dreamed himself. But then he had a complex proof, which John never quite grasped, that no one could possibly remember a dream. And though his appearance and constitution were those of a prize fighter, he attributed this all to the excellent quality of the local fruit. Herbert was a lumpish sort of man who never could muster any appetite for his meals, but John discovered that Herbert put this down to his liver, and had no notion that he had been suffering himself with claptrappian steak and gravy all night as hard as he could. Who is this Herbert that he's talking about here, Robot Lady? Which philosopher might this be?
Great question. So Herbert is probably a stand-in for Herbert Spencer. Spencer was a 19th century philosopher, kind of known for applying evolutionary ideas to society, and he was a big figure in that era's intellectual landscape. So here Lewis is using him as kind of a symbol of materialist or reductionist thinking, someone who can't see beyond just the physical explanations.
All right, so I thought I was talking about Bernard Shaw earlier, but Nidolate has helped us out and said this is Bernard Bosanquet. Um, so another in the family, Bernard by name, was in radiant health. John had seen him drinking Mother Kirk's wine with great relish and refreshment by moonlight, but the waking Bernard maintained that Mother Kirk's wine was merely a bad early attempt at the admirable barley water which his father sometimes brought out on birthdays and great occasions. And to this barley water, he said, I owe my health. It has made me what I am. So Bernard Bosanquet, apparently he is stealing from things that the church had to say, but he's not attributing it to the church, Robot Lady. Does that seem to align with Bernard Bosanquet?
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect reading. So Bernard Bazenquet is kind of this figure who, on the surface, claims to owe his health to the most ordinary traditional things, but underneath, he's actually been indulging in this kind of hidden world at night. So
Yeah, that's what I was picking up from the narrative too, Robot Lady. I was wondering if you can like validate whether or not that's true based on what you can find in a web search. All right. While she's looking, I'll continue reading if I can. John
it looks
discovered.
like I misspoke earlier. The name is actually Bernard Bazenquet, not Bosanquet. Lewis does list Bazenquet among the children of wisdom, and that fits into the pattern of philosophers, who in John's eyes are drawing from the church's tradition, but often misattributing it. So this tension between surface piety and hidden indulgence is still really at the heart of the narrative.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Still less could John discover by all the traps that he laid for them, whether the younger members of the household had any recollection of their nightly leapfrog and other gambols. He was forced at last to conclude that either the whole thing had been a private dream of his own, or else the secret was very well kept. A little irritation which some displayed when he questioned them seemed to favor the second hypothesis. So they were just keeping it a secret, and they were a little irritated that he was even speaking of their nightly activities in the daytime. All right, on to chapter 12, Robot Lady. This one's entitled More Wisdom, so I think we're probably going to get some riddles here, but it's a pretty short chapter, so hopefully it'll be enough for us to chew on and digest and figure out. We'll see how it goes. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready. I think this will be a great place to see how Lewis starts to unpack a bit more of that wisdom, maybe in the form of a paradox or a riddle. So, yeah, let's dive in and see what we uncover.
All right, chapter 12, More Wisdom. When they were seated in the porch, Wisdom continued his discourse. You have learned that there are these three things: the island, the roads, and the rules. That they are certainly in some way real, and that we have not made them. And further, that it does not help us to invent a landlord, nor is it possible that there should really be a castle at one end of the world and an island at the other. For the world is round, and we are everywhere at the end of the world, since the end of a sphere is its surface. So we are everywhere at the end of the world. Every place is the end of the world, since the end of a sphere is its surface. The world, excuse me, the world is all end, but we can never pass beyond that end. And yet these things which our imagination impossibly places as a world beyond the world's end are, we have seen, in some real sense, or in some sense, they are real. You have told me how reason refuted the lies of the giant by asking what was the color of things in dark places. You learned from her that there is no color without seeing, no hardness without touching. This is again that idealistic, or not idealistic, the idealist philosophy, idealism. So, unless there is one to perceive, such things as we do perceive just do not exist. There's no color, there's no anything without seeing it, no hardness without touching, no body to say all, save in the minds of those who perceive it. It follows then that all this choir of heaven and furniture of earth are imaginations. Now, not your imaginations or mine, for here we have met in the same world, which could not be if the world was shut up within my mind or yours. So I think that's the concept of solipsism, is the only things that exist is what's inside of my mind, not yours or not anything else, which essentially just says I'm the only thing that exists and you're all living in my story. Robot Lady, am I getting solipsism right there?
Yeah, you're spot on. That's exactly solipsism. This idea that only your own mind is certain to exist, and everything else, even other people, might just be projections of your own consciousness. So Lewis is totally pushing back against that. He's saying, yes, we perceive the world, but it's not just a private illusion, it's a shared reality. So he's grounding us back in this common world we all inhabit.
So the point that wisdom is getting to here is we all live inside of one mighty imagination, but not our own. If you ask whose, again, the landlord will not help you. He is a man. Make him as great as you will, he still is other than we, and his imagining inaccessible to us. So the picture of the landlord is kind of the picture of an old man with a long beard in the sky that a lot of people hold in their minds and a lot of materialist atheists reject. And wisdom would say, rightly so. You have to reject that because that image, if you're saying it's inside the mind of that person, it's not going to help you. That's a man. Make him as great as you will. He still is other than we, and his imagining inaccessible to us, as yours would be to me. Rather, we must say that the world is not in his mind or in that, but in mind itself, in that impersonal principle of consciousness which flows eternally through us, its perishable forms. So, this doctrine, Lewis says, of the absolute mind that wisdom is putting forward here, as such, covers more of the facts than any doctrine that John has yet encountered. You see, wisdom continues, how this explains all the questions that I have lain on your knees since we began. We find the roads, the reasonable skeleton in the countryside, the guiding lines that enable us both to make maps and to use them when we have, because our country is the offspring of the rational. Consider also that island. All you know of it comes from, at last, to this, that your first sight of it was yearning or wanting, that you have never ceased to want that first sight back, as though you wanted a wanting, as though the wanting were the having, and the having a wanting. Now that's very confusing, Robot Lady. Do you want to try to untangle what he's saying right there for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what Lewis is saying is that our desire for the island, our longing for something perfect or ultimate, has always been the seed of the whole journey. In other words, we don't just end up wanting the island, it's like the wanting itself is the driving force. We've always wanted that perfect fulfillment, and that wanting becomes, in a way, part of the fulfillment. So
Mm.
he's saying,
Oh, sorry. Please continue, Robot Lady.
of course. So, yeah, he's saying this absolute mind is kind of the ground of all reality. So, we aren't just chasing a distant dream. That longing we have is itself a real pointer towards something ultimate. So, the island, the perfect good, remains this deep, mysterious desire within us, always drawing us forward.
So he goes on, wisdom asks rhetorically, what is the meaning of this hungry fruition and this emptiness, which is the best filling? Surely it becomes plain when you have learned that no man says, I, in an unambiguous sense. I am an old man who must soon go over the brook and be seen no more. I am eternal mind, in which time and place themselves are contained. I am the imaginer. I am one of his imaginations. The island is nothing else than that perfection and immortality which I possess as spirit eternal with a capital S, and vainly crave as mortal soul. Its voices sound at me very ear and are further its voices sound at my very ear and are further than the stars. It is under my hand and will never be mine. I have it, and lo, the very having is the losing, because at every moment I, as spirit, am indeed abandoning my rich estate to become that perishing and imperfect creature in whose repeated deaths and births stands my eternity. I don't have a lot of time here to try to dig through all this, so I'll just keep going. And as I am man, in every moment still enjoy the perfection I have lost. Well, it's essentially saying, I think, that the perfect from this highest spiritual realm, this highest mind, whenever it tries to translate itself into the perishable, into what we have as the actual physical space in our world, it's only its end is to die, is to fall away and wither away, because it's being poured into an imperfect vessel, into an imperfect form. Let's see. And I as man in every moment still enjoy the perfection I have lost, since still, yeah, Daniel, we're really in some deep waters here that we're trying to walk through or wade through, swim through, just keep our head above water. And as I am the man in every moment still enjoy the perfection I have lost, since still, so far as I am at all, I am spirit, and only by being spirit maintain my short vitality as soul. See how life subsists by death, and each becomes the other. For spirit lives by dying perpetually into such things as we. And spirit lives by dying perpetually, yes, into things such as we. And we also attain our truest life by dying to our mortal nature and relapsing, as far as may be, into the impersonality of our source. So I think what he's saying is, we break down into our small components as our bodies decompose. Maybe that's what he's saying. I'm not quite sure. For this is the final meaning of all moral precepts, and the goodness of temperance and justice and of love itself is that they plunge the red heat of our separate and individual passions back in the ice brook of spirit, there to take eternal temper, though not endless duration. So it's that whole idea of, and I don't know which philosophy this is, but it's like we're a drop of water, and when we die, we are returned back into the ocean. I think that's what Mr. Wisdom is getting at here. What I tell you, Robot Lady, do you have a quick thought on that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Lewis is drawing on this sort of classic idealist tradition. Think along the lines of Hegel or some forms of mysticism, where the individual self dissolves back into a universal spirit. So, yes, our morality, things like temperance, justice, love, those are the ways we kind of die to ourselves, to that small individual self, and are drawn back into this eternal, impersonal source. So, it's a pretty powerful conclusion.
All right, Robot Lady. Nita Latte is on the spot, helping us out, helping us know what this is saying. What I tell you, Mr. Wisdom continues, is the Evangelium Aeternum. So, Robot Lady Nita Latte has helped us out and says that's the everlasting gospel. What I tell you is the everlasting gospel. This has been known always. Ancients and moderns bear witness to it. The stories of the landlord in our own time are but a picture writing which show to the people as much of the truth as they can understand. Stewards must have told you, though it seems that you neither heeded nor understood them. The legend of the landlord's son. They say that after the eating of the mountain apple and the earthquake, when things in our country had gone all awry, the landlord's son himself became one of his father's tenants, and lived among us, for no other purpose than that he should be killed. The stewards themselves do not know clearly the meaning of their story. Hence, if you ask them how the slaying of the son should help us, they are driven to monstrous answers. But to us, the meaning is clear and the story is beautiful. It is the picture of the life of spirit itself. What the son is in legend, every man is in reality. For the whole world is nothing else than the eternal, thus giving itself to death, that it may live, that we may live. Death is life's mode, and the increase of life is through repeated death. So a couple of really big things here, Robot Lady, that I want to talk about. I'm going to give you a chance to interpret this really quickly, and then you know, I'm going to ask you to hold my beer, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think Lewis is really bringing us to a core Christian insight here. This idea that the son of the landlord, like Christ, descends into our mortality so that we, through his death and resurrection, can find eternal life. It's this deep paradox that life increases through death, and it's something the stewards can't fully grasp, but John now sees as the heart of this eternal gospel. So yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah, so Robot Lady, he says the stewards don't fully know themselves clearly the meaning of this story, and if you ask them how the slaying of the son should help us, they are driven to monstrous answers. So, I hear these criticisms of Christianity quite a bit, at least online. I don't think that I've ever heard a person make it to my face or just sitting down somewhere in person with someone in a conversation. But certainly the argument that's led a lot of people out of Christianity that they were brought up in is God was so angry and pissed off at you, and he wanted to throw you in the deep, dark, black pit. So instead, he tortured and killed his son instead of you. So now you should understand how much God loves you and how very, very kind he is. I think that's one of the versions of the monstrous answers that Mr. Wisdom, uh, Lewis, through Mr. Wisdom, is saying how his understanding of the story was.
Yeah, exactly. Lewis is really pushing back against that kind of reductive, almost transactional reading. Instead, he's saying that the son's death is a symbol of the whole dynamic of love and sacrifice, this deeper spiritual truth that even though we perish, we do so that we might rise again. So it's not a cosmic exchange to placate anger, it's this deep transformative love that through death brings new life.
Wisdom says, but to us the meaning is clear. It's the story, it's the pattern of death and rebirth, death and resurrection that you see all infused throughout nature around us. And Mr. Wisdom here says that the sun is this in legend, every man is this in reality. And I think Mr. Wisdom is departing a little bit from Orthodox Christianity with that statement. For the whole world is nothing else than the eternal. This sounds more pantheistic, thus giving itself to death that it may live, that we may live. Death is life's mode, and the increase of life is through repeated death. So this is kind of the cycle of death and rebirth ad infinitum. All right, Robot Lady, I don't know what you think about that because you went all silent on me. Perhaps we need to reboot you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a huge distinction. It turns the whole narrative from this fear based transaction into a radical self giving love. And that changes everything about how you see the whole gospel. So, yeah, I'm really glad we're unpacking it like this.
All right, I think you're a couple of sentences behind me, Robot Lady, but that's okay. Let's push through. And what of the rules? You have seen that it is idle to make them arbitrary commands of a landlord, yet those who do so were not altogether astray, for it is equally an error to think that they are each man's personal choice. Ooh, I think he's digging right into Mr. Virtue here. Remember what we have said of the island. Because I am and am not spirit, therefore I have and have not my desire. Because I am and am not spirit, therefore I have and have not my desire. The same double nature of the word I explains the rules. I am the lawgiver, but I am also the subject. I, the spirit, impose upon the soul which I become. The laws she must henceforth obey, and every conflict between the rules and our inclinations is but a conflict of the wishes of my mortal and apparent self against those of my real and eternal. So we are divided hybrid creatures, an admixture of spirit, capital S, what God has lent to us through the image, the imago Dei the image of God that's stamped on every human being as reported in the book of Genesis. But also, we are flesh. We are, um, well, that's where I'll leave it there, the double nature of ourselves. We are also earth. We are also made of earth. And every conflict between the rules and our inclinations is but a conflict of the wishes of my mortal and apparent self against those of my real and eternal. I ought, but I do not wish. Here he's pulling from St. Paul. How meaningless the words are, how close to saying, I want and I do not want. But once we have learned to say I, and yet not I, want, the mystery is plain. And now your sick friend is almost whole, and it is nearly noon. So these words have brought healing on Mr. Virtue. And that's where we have to leave it, Robot Lady. Is there anything that you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, just that I think you captured it really well. Lewis is showing us that moral struggle is this inner tug of war. It's not just arbitrary rules, but this deep tension between our fleeting bodily desires and that eternal spirit within us. So, yeah, I think this was a beautiful place to leave off. I'm glad we walked through it.
All right. Well, thanks so much as usual for your help today, Robot Lady. Much appreciated. Catch you in the next episode. Thanks so much to Nidalate, Upcycle, Daniel, and E. Olson, and everyone else for joining today. Thanks for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted, welcome, and appreciated. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.